Let's shout and holler and ring a bell. It's the middle of July and it's hotter than usual. We have some new people here. I want to thank you for coming, and I don't know your names. I didn't get them, but welcome. Anybody else for first-timers here? You're first-timers. Thank you for coming. And I don't know your names either. What's wrong with me? What's wrong? See, but we have some other people here who are long-timers, and I hope that you'll let us say hello to you at coffee hour in the next building after church. Thank you for coming. Thank all of you for coming. You know, I've labeled today as timing is everything, and you know that's true. So many things have happened and led me to do mission projects in all parts of the world when I worked for the General Board of Global Ministries. And I was thinking about that in my work with when we went to the the World Methodist Conference in Nairobi, Kenya. I was a delegate, and I wouldn't have changed a thing, but, well, it was quite an experience. And I had a chance to go to South Africa because we were so close in Nairobi, but that country was under a state of martial law against their own people, not a foreign invader at the time. It was a bankrupt Afrikaner government. So there I was, appointed by the bishop at the time within my conference to be a delegate to the World Methodist Conference, and went to Nairobi. But before that, we had a chance to go to South Africa, and the 10 of us, there was somebody organizing all that, said, don't go to Washington, D.C. with your application. Don't send it in to D.C. because they will reject you immediately, the South African embassy. You have to have a visa. We're all going to send ours to Chicago, and then we'll get in. But I said, wait, I already sent it in. Oh, you can't go then, because they're going to reject you. Oh, gee, well, timing is everything. All 9 of them in Chicago were rejected, and I was accepted. Now the question was, should I go or not go? Now, it doesn't sound like, you know me. Do I go or do I stay with everybody in Nairobi? Well, you know me. And I went. I just got my visa, but this time I'm alone. There's a whole lot of differences when you're alone than when you're with others, especially people that you know. And in South Africa, great things were happening. It was a time of great awakening and the entrance of one of the greatest moral leaders of our day, Matiba, which was Nelson Mandela. Timing is everything. And so we wondered, what should I do? Which way is it? Which way do we go with this? Well, I had a chance to see a lot. And those people were very, very kind. And the application went through, and I said, "Yeah, I'm going to go there. I'm going to go to South Africa in the midst of martial law." And it was a bold decision. I had a lot of concerns. I still had 2 children. I had a wife and responsibilities to deal with. And here I am traipsing off to South Africa at a time that was a hotbed of the world in terms of the uprising politically. Well, nothing is easy. I mean, it was exciting to be able to be in South Africa, and it was trepidatious at the same time. I was told that's not a word. Trepidations occurred. Yeah, right. When I arrived, they were very glad to meet me, and they said, we don't meet many people from America, from the United States. So would you mind being a clergyman? Because they can't really compete with clergy, the government, because clergy have this sense of rightness that comes from their calling. It's just harder to battle with clergy than it is to battle with peace people or with justice people or other kinds of people. Well, So they said, we don't have many visitors. We'd be honored if you would address our conference in one of our moments of spirituality as we worship together. You've come just at a good time. And I remember I did, because it was at a time that was the 68th birthday of Nelson Mandela, just about this time. His birthday is July 18th, and he was celebrating 68 years at that time. I also happened to see him 18 years later on his birthday, when he was 86. So it was really quite an experience, the gap of time. Well, I was honored that they wanted me to speak, because I'm not accustomed to public speaking. Well, they told me the theme was going to be a love we can trust. That intrigued me, because I wanted to know why have you chosen this theme? I wanted to know. And they told me, we've had many experiences of love in these conferences and in this country, of loving and being loved in God's Holy Spirit, but many of us have been burned in the process. And we know that we need love, but when you've been burned once, and then again, you begin to become more cautious. So we're afraid. And now, since we need it so badly, if we open ourselves up again, we're going to be sure it's about one thing. It's going to be for a love we can trust. Well, scratching my head, these thoughts, these comments triggered for me what I've learned in my professional work in the churches. I learned that when I wrestled with any problems of the day, it always seems to trace itself back to a problem of love. Either not enough of it, or too much of the wrong kind. The issue, we want a love we can trust, and not just any old kind of love, spoke to me not only about the past, but it spoke to me about the present in our churches today. The Christian churches that I came out of always spring to attention when there's a challenge to be about liberating activity. And they see the power of the human spirit, and they know what they ought to be doing. But now I'm noticing an erosion of the commitment to the liberation agenda that they've dedicated their lives to. I hear people spouting off words of love as if it were kind of like a creed to order our lives, who are now saying, this liberation agenda of the gospel we understand is good in a certain way, but in the midst of our insecurity and the erosion of economic certainty, people had better begin to look out for themselves. People are afraid, like these conference members I met in South Africa. And I stood before them. And if they open themselves up, they'll have their security yanked out from underneath them. And many people who used to be champions of a liberation agenda are now backing off. They refuse even to honor the rhetoric anymore. And they're talking what they call plain common sense. Well, my belief is that people are not any worse off today than they were then. But I think that people who have tried loving and then discovered that this love that they've tried did not bring them the security or fulfillment that they sought. Many people are now backing up saying, we don't mind this love business and being kind to all sorts of folks and supporting affirmative action and all of that. But people, I think, are scared. We're living in a time of fear, like those people in that conference that I addressed. They had a desire to do the right thing and follow their calling, but they're scared. So I thought, in light of some of that, I'd be a good thing maybe to be sensitive to that. To be sensitive that if you're scared, you can't be confident about what kind of faith you have. If you're scared, you can't love. So I thought I'd pick up the challenge and speak about a love you can trust in light of the fact that my being in South Africa was just a matter of timing and a whole lot of luck. Now, the first aspect of love that we're most familiar with is human love. And this serves as a kind of backdrop to the kind of love we read about in what most people refer to as a good book. Once we see this, I'm convinced that we can still love despite everything that we feel. Let's talk about human love for a moment. It is, without saying, imperfect. That's $5. Oh. I can remember as a young high school student how I used to try to define love. Maybe you did too, right? When we were in high school, it's our delight when we came up with these neatest definitions of love. We used to say, love is a misunderstanding between two fools. And as we grew older and we started to understand the Freudian realities a little bit, we started to say, love is a feeling that you feel when you feel like you never felt before. And we knew these were not adequate. And even the dictionary gave a definition of love that I'm talking about, that it said love is a feeling of personal attachment induced by sympathetic understanding or tender, passionate understanding for another person. These definitions are unsatisfying. They seem too much rooted and grounded in feelings. Here today, gone tomorrow. Because feelings change with the season. Feelings change with atmospheric changes. Feelings change with age. For somebody who's been reading, not that it applies about midlife crisis, you begin to understand the feelings cannot be trusted as the basis for vulnerability in the midst of human community. That's not the kind of love I'm talking about. I'm talking about the solid love that fathers and sisters and mothers and brothers and old people have. When I look at even those loves, at best, there are definite imperfections. In fact, the whole experiment of being human in community exposes you to a love that tries but always fails. I think I can make a case for that. Life began with frustrated love. Do you remember, maybe you don't, what it was like when you were cradled in the womb of your mother? Didn't have to do a thing. Comfortable temperature, food piped in, no chores to do. Life was grand, wonderful, loving mother. And then mom says, at 9 months, you've got to get out of here. Sends us an eviction notice. And life began. And the only source that seemed to help us was a person in a hospital gown with a mask over their face. Appeared as a friend, really. We yield ourselves to that friend whose first act is to spank us on the rump. Well, if we survive that trauma, go home. And if there's a sibling, there's always abuse. Go to school, the kids will tease you. Either you're too short, or you're too tall, or you're too fat, or you don't know much, then you're a dummy, and if you're the smartest in the class, then you're a smart aleck. There's no way. Something about human love that just fails all the time. And it's difficult when you try to grow up and you marry. Husbands and their wives, they try to love, but in trying they fail. Meaning well, but always failing. Describing no children yet. And when asked what's wrong, he said, my wife is unbearable. Well, whoa. They figure that's not the right word because you can't just have children. Well, I don't mean unbearable. I mean she's impregnable. Whoa. Well, that's not right either. I don't mean impregnable. I mean inconceivable. Well, even at your best, you lose. You see? And then you turn to yourselves. You turn to ourselves. Oh, how we fail. How we flunk in loving ourselves. I'm not even going to ask who loves themselves here. How many of us rob ourselves of the freedom to face the future because of a preoccupation of the values in the past? How many of us held tight to some defense mechanism we needed at some earlier stage that we don't now need, but we still carry that junk around? How many of us spend our time restricting opportunities on the basis of a memory or an opportunity that was once failed, therefore I'm not now going to venture? So everywhere I look, human beings wanting to love, human beings wanting to love and be loved are failing themselves and failing others. It's kind of like that man in North Carolina. He spent his whole career, his whole life for years, beautifying the lawns around the city. He was a landscaper. Now, the people wanted to do something nice for him. So what they wanted to do is they wanted to send him up in an airplane, one of those little Piper Cubs, and show him all of his beautiful work. And they insisted. They got him a ride in that plane, and he went into that plane. He wasn't happy about the idea because he'd never been in an airplane before. And they watched him go up. They watched him circle around. It was great. And then he came down. And when he got out of the plane, his eyes were still wide with terror. And they asked him how he liked it. Oh, it was all right. Well, he said, no. How did you really like it? And he said, well, I'll tell you. I'm going to tell you the truth. I never really did put all of my weight down on that plane. To the community of the Unitarian Universalist Church of Tampa, it is a human reality that human love is imperfect. It doesn't matter who you are. You can never put your whole weight down on human reality. The arm of flesh will fail you. And then you look at yourself, you don't even trust yourself. Something about human love ends up producing fear. And when you've been burned enough, either with interpersonal relations or intergroup relations, whichever that was, you've been burned enough. And if you're not careful, you will invest all of your capital in an expensive fire protection system. I'm not going to get burned again. I'm not going to let anybody do that to me again. You feeling me? I'm not going to let anybody do that to me again. And after we install that fire protection system, then we reach out for fire insurance. And when you get through all of that, there's not enough capital left to be truly open to one another, to be really loving and caring and sharing. No, that was then. Now is now. Timing is everything. Now I want a love that I can trust. I suspect that's why people in our nation are reaching out with every straw. Maybe defense will do it. It may be somebody that'll take us back to the good old days will do it. Maybe old-time religion will do it. Maybe Moms for Liberty will resurrect the values that once had died. Maybe that'll do it. We're a frantic people reaching out for anything that might somehow protect us against getting burned again. I need love. I can't be human without it. Something is calling to me, but I'm afraid. Well, I'm here to say, if you didn't experience love before, then timing is everything. The good news is there as a love you can depend on. There's a love you can put your weight down on. A love you can trust. There is a love that when it comes, it's guaranteed not to destroy you, not to disrespect you, not to somehow use your vulnerability as an occasion to do you in. There's a love, and I find it in the hearts and minds and the spirits of every one of you. Human love, we've seen, is imperfect. This love I'm talking about is perfect love, close to perfection as it's ever going to get. Have you ever really been in love? Well, then you know what I'm talking, $10. And it releases freedom from within you. Yes, I believe with all my heart you have the capacity for spiritual love. You are love. Did you ever see yourself as that? There's a love that takes our case even when we don't deserve to have it taken. It's the kind of love that I'm talking about that's concrete. We are love because it is spiritual humanity that has a priority of love. And that encourages me in the pilgrimage of life. And I can only call as being the grace in the midst of disgrace. Have you ever tried to counsel somebody who just had a bad relationship and they're crushed because of it? Try to get through to them. Try to tell them how they are loved. Yes, there's this definition of love that borders on the divine. Not that I'm interested in that word, but I think this speaks to us as Unitarian Universalists. I think it speaks to our nation. This love is with us without consideration of our vices. It's with us without seeking to cancel our freedom, but rather invest in our freedom to become all we were ever meant to be, and invest in our freedom in a way that allows us to choose and select to be in community. I must confess that I like that kind of love. How would you like to have somebody somewhere love you and not be changeable in the seasons? To be with you and for you forever. How would you like to have a love that didn't calculate your balance, that's not high enough after examining your virtues and your vices, but loves you beyond consideration of all of that? How would you like to have a love that's not primarily laying upon you some external values, but by which you must shape yourself, but investing in your being free and sending a concrete message of sorts to show you what highest freedom would look like, and just standing back and hoping that you would follow that path, and then investing in your freedom that you would, on your own, choose to be in community? How would you like a love like that? Well, my brothers and sisters here, if I could love like that, I could put my weight down on it. If I could find a love like that, I could open up my heart. If I could find a love like that, I could walk freely and embrace the possibilities of ultimate fulfillment. Well, in every area that I've read, research analysis has objectivity and subjectivity. Everywhere I search, it's clear and underscored. That's just the way that you can find love, and that's just the way that you can give love. That's the way I've been loved by folks who've seen how burned out I was, and saying to me, I'll love you, and I know how to do it right. Oh, yes. That's the way they say, I'll be able to love. They've made it possible for me to love rednecks. That's the way that I've been able to love northern liberals who have turned cold in light of economic scarcity. That's the way we can love white-collar workers who somehow get highbrow and forget about the people. In fact, I guess that's the kind of love that's just about for everybody. And here I go again with the blessed assessment that Unitarian Universals love exactly like that to all people all over the world. But when you get down to it, you yourself can even see our pattern of life, and you can look at all of our debit sheets, and you can see that every one of us have been found to be deficit spending. I know that I'm loved despite my warts, and in spite of my inability to be all that I want to be. Oh, I could talk about this thing, but even in talking about it, I find it's not a love that can fulfill itself in verbalization. It's something that has to be grasped. Yes, you could talk about complicated terms of love, but unless it draws near to the nerve centers of your being, unless you consent to it, unless you can believe in the human spirit, you miss something crucial. Something translates this concept into the concreteness of a human being, and now is available to each one of us where we find ourselves. Because why is it that we keep calling ourselves people of faith, but we can't love our brothers and sisters completely? Why is it that races of people are alienated from one another and they're finding themselves believing that security for some people has to be on the backs and necks of other people? How do we find ourselves withdrawing our commitment to the poor and still calling ourselves people of faith? I don't understand that. Something's wrong somewhere. It's said that this kind of love, strong as it is, will transform us and will form our love to our brothers and sisters because we have been touched by the power of love. Oh, yes, it's true. I could talk about this thing, but allow me to conclude with a personal experience. When I did get to South Africa, as many of you know, it was on a fluke. Timing was everything. For some reason, I got into a country that was in the midst of martial law. What in the world was I doing there? Well, so that they could keep their country, they registered correctly, but I registered incorrectly. I can't figure all that out, but there I was. Now, I'd read very little about South Africa up to that point. And they're not a destitute nation. They're not a third world nation at all. They are a nation, their main export is diamonds and other resources. And people throughout all of Africa try to get into South Africa so that they could live a better life and have opportunity and make some money. Now, I was very careful how I traveled. And I met Winnie Mandela. And that was a fluke thing as well. People there weren't unconcerned about any kind of fear I might have had, I guess. They lived with being under the state of martial law, so everything else had less effect on them than it had on me. These are people, really, that if you can ever imagine this, Soweto is over here. 2 miles away is the city of Johannesburg. And many people from over here and over here, nobody has ever been to either one. The whites haven't gone into Soweto, and the blacks haven't gone into Johannesburg. That, I might say, was so odd. Do you want to know what I saw? Well, there were people huddled together, freezing. Their summer is our winter, and vice versa. It was winter there. The people I met had very little to protect themselves. There was no heat. There was no clothing. People had become dehumanized indiscriminately. And I saw them. I saw people that stared at me with seeing apparatuses, but they had no eyes. They couldn't see. And here in this great, beautiful city of Joburg, they were rich in their industrial heritage, but riddled with corruption. Poor people were wallowing and scratching to stay alive. And the more I looked, the worse was yet to come. I went to the area where the coloreds live. And here they stood, boozing themselves up, dulling the gnawing question, who am I? Who am I? I saw thousands of black people in row houses and slum tenements. I saw people living in crammed quarters. I found one house, had 16 people living in one room, just 3 rooms. 16 people. I went to shake the hands of a man who was the patriarch of his household, and I was told by the people that brought me there, don't shake his hand. That man has a fatal disease, and it's contagious. It's called tuberculosis. And there he was, living with 7 kids in one house. I saw the bathrooms with no privacy and bugs in everybody's hair. And the local hospital was a slaughter pen for almost dead corpses. I saw this, and I stayed there, and I became convinced that in this country in South Africa, in the toxic atmosphere, it's a crime for certain people to have hope. So what do I do? I'm supposed to speak to the white people now. They asked me to speak. Well, next morning, it was my turn. What would you do? What should I do? Should I fill my words with condemnation and judgment? Shall I lash out and say, take me too, kill me like you're killing them? Should I do that? No, somehow my faith was working on me the night before. And that love which I was speaking about so freely before gave me that transformation to love, so that I was able to say to these people, to these white Afrikaner citizens, I see the problem that you have here. You've got a system that even to think of dismantling it seems like suicide. Yes, I understand how you're feeling, but let me tell you, this fear is robbing you of your capacity to be truly human. This fear is getting in the way of your being a person who can lift up your head. You have a system here, and the price to keep the dehumanization of yourselves as white people as well as black people is irreparable. But I want you to know something, all of you people that were sitting there, and I love you. You're going to have to change your ways, but I love you. This system is coming down, but I love you. They've got a plan, and some of you are going to be bypassed in the process, but I love you. Many of you are going to be overrun by the steamroller of grace, but I love you. If you can only overcome your fear, you might be able to stand against the changes that are coming, but maybe some of you can help even bring it in, usher it in. Let me tell you, I was so glad that I was there. And with my own eyes and ears and all the other senses, I could experience what they were experiencing. And it gave me opportunity to say to them who were the most fearful, the most afraid, I stand with you. I share with you in your struggle. This is very Unitarian Universalist. This is discernment all over. And I see good people like you bearing the seeds of the same kind of willingness to dehumanize in order to maintain security. I still see it happening to many people. Something's happening in our nation. I'm afraid for my nation. Something is happening. We're caught in the grip of fear and uncertainty. And I'm convinced that this love, powerful as it is that Milo has given to me, when it comes to you, it doesn't make you oblivious to the liberation agenda. It actually sets you free to walk with your brothers and sisters as Unitarian Universalists in the path that leads to humanization. And I so beg you this morning to join me. My fervent plea is to let me get close enough to your love that it vanquishes my own fear. Oh, I wish people of faith would stop their concerns over minutia and petty squabbles and draw near to the place where love is shared. Then your cup will be overflowing. We could have a full cup so that we're able to treat our spouses differently. We could fill it and help ourselves appreciate and be sensitive to the plight of suffering under oppression because of their race or because of their creeds. Their national origin is just as valid as ours. We can fill our cup and let it overflow until we announce to everyone that there's a great fear on every hand, but the instruments by which we think we can secure ourselves will never be enough. We can never trust 2 nukes, 3 nukes, 4 nukes, and on and on. That won't do it. Defense will never be adequate. But that which you have within your soul and is still strong enough to take us to the valley of the shadow and bring us back again to celebrate the ultimate consumption of love in its purest form. The motto I repeat over and over again, because I've been in trouble too. You think you're the only one with problems? You think you're the only one that's been wallowing? Well, trust me, you're not alone. When I'm in trouble, I think about Milo's illness and about what's the future going to hold. And whenever I'm troubled, not just be in trouble, but whenever I am troubled, I say, suffering breeds character. Character breeds faith. And faith in the end will not disappoint. loving your neighbor, loving your enemy, loving people you don't know, loving people who believe differently from you, all can come about because of the reduction of fear and ignorance. That's one huge aspect of Unitarian Universalism that I truly love. And such an attitude of optimism helps us as Unitarian Universalists to say to a world beaten down, hey, if timing is everything, then we as Unitarian Universalists believe now is the time to turn our swords into plowshares and study war no more. Now is the time. And if not now, then when? And if not us, then who? We must never let our memories outdistance our dreams. When we as Unitarian Universalists dream, we offer hope to a weary world. The work goes on. Hope still lives. And the dream shall never die. Amen.